Owen said, my name is Katie Wax. I'm a junior at Randolph-Macon, and I preached here about 2 years ago, and I'm so glad I can be back. I really love the drive up here because from Randolph-Macon, you take 54 and then some back roads and some back roads and some more back roads. And I drove up this morning and I said, oh, the detour's still here. No, we keep going straight. Because my first time I did get lost and thought I couldn't go straight through the detour. But we are here and we are so blessed to be here this morning. I remember when I was a kid, I would always test my parents and my siblings. My poor brother, let me tell you. Him and I are 3.5 years apart, and I'm surprised that he still does love me because I was very tough on him, to say the least. He would always make a competition out of everything, and I was very competitive, so I loved it. And we would run around with all the guys on the street, and I was the youngest, and I was the only girl. And one story that I remember distinctly with my brother, I was probably about the age of 5 or 6, and so my brother was probably 9, and he played soccer. He was very active. He loved to run around the yard, and we would play in the streets with all the kids until the street lights came on. So one thing I loved about my house growing up is there's a little pond in the backyard. So we have our fence and a little pond in this little neighborhood. And one afternoon, he said, I bet I can run around the pond faster than you. Now that was fighting words to a little sister who's 3.5 years younger than you, and who I knew I could beat him in a foot race. I knew it could happen. So I said, okay, let me prove you wrong, Josh. So Josh doubted me, and I wanted to show him up. Now who do you think won? Me. Thank you, thank you. So the future track runner didn't only beat him once, didn't beat him twice, but beat him 3 times around the pond. He eventually gave up and realized that I would win. So the thing that I always do is I always rub it in my brother's face. I'm like, haha, who beat you around the pond when we were 5 and 6? And he was like, whatever, I can beat you now. But he says that to the future track runner. But why didn't he believe in me for me to beat him? Why did he doubt in me? What does it take you to doubt? What does it take for you to not believe? Having someone doubt in you, in my mind, could possibly be the worst thing. I'm someone who is a perfectionist and like to make everything perfect. I don't want anybody to have doubts. I don't want anybody to have worries. I want to make sure everybody is good. And so I struggle when someone doubts in me. But let's flip the tables. I'm sure all of us have doubted in someone before. Whatever it is. Why did you doubt them? Were you like my brother Josh and doubted in them because you thought you could do it better? Or were they not credible enough? Or did you simply not have faith? In the gospel lesson today, we hear about this story of Jesus appearing before the disciples. The first time that he appeared, Thomas was not present. Many scholars do not know where Thomas was. Some have different inclinations. But boy, did he miss out. I'm like Thomas, and I would hate the fact that my friends got to see something and I didn't. The disciples, for the first time after Jesus was nailed to the cross, was filled with joy. Now when Thomas returns, like I said, all of his best friends are like, oh yeah, I saw Jesus, I'm so excited. But I bet you Thomas had bad FOMO, as the kids say, which is fear of missing out. I bet you Thomas had bad FOMO. That's the word that you can use to all your grandchildren and kids that you know. That Thomas had bad FOMO, fear of missing out. And I often think about this story a lot when I'm struggling through a time. Because why? Thomas couldn't see. Thomas didn't know. As I said, I was a track runner for many years. And when I was younger, I would often run around the neighborhood, like I said. My love for running was extreme. This especially increased in high school. I averaged about 75 to 100 miles a week. That's what I ran. I would always come to practice early, stay a little later, and even do two-a-days. I would wake up in the morning before my parents were even up or even thinking about being up, and I would go on an easy shakeout 5-mile run. Now I know 5 miles isn't easy, but in my mind, I thought that's what I needed to get better. My senior year was a big year for me, as it is for most high school seniors. I was being looked at by colleges and universities for running track and trying to maintain my grades. But little did I know, everything would quickly change. I was running my first indoor track meet of my senior year, and I was on pace for a 12-minute 2-mile, which means I would run both of my miles in 6 minutes. I was very excited. I knew what I needed to do. This was what I trained for. This is what I woke up early in the morning to do. But my life took a quick turn when I heard the loudest pop in my hip. When I crossed the finish line, I collapsed. And I instantly knew that my season and my career for running was over. The following 3 years until now would follow with lots of frustration and high hopes and promises and lots of doctors leaving the room puzzled. I was a young girl. They didn't understand why a young girl could have hip pain. They said, "This isn't supposed to happen. We don't know why you're feeling this pain." So those 3 years consisted of what happened to be 4 major hip surgeries. In 3 years, I faced 4 hip surgeries. These surgeries were a time of doubt and confusion. I was confused. Why, God? I thought you wanted me to go to Virginia Wesleyan and run track and cross country and be their person. I thought you wanted me to go to Mary Washington and run track and be there, be on that team. Obviously, as we all know, God has his own plan. I doubted in God. Why? Why did I have to go through something like this? My cookie-cutter plan wasn't the same. You could say I was like Thomas. All of my friends would tell me, God has a plan. I know God has a plan. God is going to make something good for you. But here I was in the back row, not believing in this. I wanted to see it with my own eyes. I was like Thomas. I wanted to put my hands through the holes and the hands through the side, because at that point in my life, I didn't know if I wanted to pursue a call in ministry or be someone to deliver the message and the love of Jesus Christ. But if I'd given up, if I didn't ask that I wanted to see the holes like Thomas did, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be standing at Rouzie's chapel. I wouldn't be at Randolph-Macon, because I would have just thrown up my hands. From these 4 surgeries, I realized that I had the best mentors and the best doctors and the best support system with me. I had my disciples, my best friends who were there alongside. This past November, I finally had my 4th and final surgery, and obviously it worked because I'm standing here in front of you guys today. And without my disbelief, without my fear, I don't think I would be able to pursue what I'm supposed to go for. Many people often think that doubting in God is bad, right? We often think, oh, if I doubt in God, that's bad. I shouldn't do that. Oh no, is God going to be mad at me? But the gospel today shows us that there's different kinds of faith, right? We have the disciples who had faith in God without seeing. But then you have Thomas who doesn't have faith because he cannot see. People have different needs in different various routes of finding faith. Because Thomas is like the rest of us. We have our own doubts. And it's hard to admit, especially when we hear the other stories about Easter and how everyone claimed to believe right away. They claimed, oh, I know Jesus is risen. They knew it. But I feel like we're more like Thomas in this story. Maybe you have gone through a time where you have doubted in God, like deaths in family, or maybe you once had a job change. Maybe you once struggled with something that you didn't think you would be able to tackle. I love the story of Thomas. And before I was writing this sermon, I would tell you, oh, I don't want to be like Thomas, but I want to be more like Thomas. Because this is a story of an honest man who loves the Lord so much that he wished to believe what was true. He wanted to believe that Jesus showed up to them, but he just needed proof. The one verse that really sticks out to me is when Jesus said to Thomas, "Put your finger here. Look at my hands. Put your hand into my side. No more disbelief. Believe." Jesus is commanding Thomas. He knows that Thomas is doubting. And the thing that is the icing on the cake is that Jesus isn't too mad at Thomas for his failure to believe. He gives him what he needs to believe. Which means when we are in times that we don't believe, Jesus is going to show up at your door. Maybe not literally. It would be cool if he did. We would all love that. But he is going to show up and enable you to believe. Thomas demanded to touch the risen Lord. And Jesus allows him to do that. There is no inclination that Thomas actually touches Jesus' wound. And seeing the wounded, resurrected Christ is enough. I mean, trust me, wouldn't we all just stand here in awe if Jesus walked on through the door with holes straight through his hands? Thomas was not a bad man. He had been one of the first to declare his faith to Jesus. He had been ready to lay down his life for him. He just wasn't, you could say, fanciful. He wasn't going to pretend to believe in something just because he wished it was there. He shook his head, and he thought he needed to get on with his life to survive. He's over in the corner. I'll believe it when I see it. My friends are over here. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I saw Jesus, but I'll believe it when I see it. But no one heard him when he said that, except for the one who is invisible now, Jesus. The amazing thing about our relationship with God is that he knows we're going to doubt. He knows we're going to struggle. And it's been a week since Easter, but he is still risen, and he is still here, and he still rose from that grave. He wants us to be honest with him. He wants us to admit that we don't believe, because he knows that he can do the imaginable or the unimaginable to make us believe and to make us see. Jesus continues to prove to us that he is worth all of our faith, all of our believing. So today, maybe you leave and say, maybe I do want to be a Thomas. Maybe I do want to be a Thomas and be honest with God, but then realize that this is the best thing to come. Let us pray. Gracious God, thank you for sending us your Son. Thank you for letting us be humans, for loving us through our doubts and our fears, and giving us stories like Thomas to continue to show us that you will always be in the doorway, ready for us to stick our fingers in Jesus' hand and side. God, we're so thankful for you and the relationship that we have with you, Lord. In your name we pray.